Welcome to a video on how to revise for English language GCSE. Now, you might be coming to this video from a couple of different places. You may be on County's YouTube site and have listened to the How to Revise a Guide for Families, and you've perhaps seen some other great resources up there. For example, there's a brilliant video on how to revise for maths, which goes alongside the family revision resource you can see on the screen now. You may also be coming to this from a different point of view. Perhaps you're a student who wants a reminder about how to go about revising for English language, or you might be a family supporting a student who again wants to know what your child should be doing to prepare themselves as best they can for their English language GCSEs. Whatever approach you're coming from, hopefully what comes up in the next 3 or 4 slides is going to be useful to you. The first thing I would say, particularly if you are a family member, students several times throughout their school career will go through sessions where we teach them specifically how to revise, and we talk about using the Cornell method, we talk about the Leitner methods of flashcards, we talk about how our working memory and long-term memories work, and how we really need to get knowledge into our long-term memories so that we can draw on that reliably when it comes to exams. If everything I've just said is a mystery to you, then go to our YouTube channel, have a look at the resource that is on screen now, How to Revise. It is an hour and 10 minutes of your life, but once you have watched that video, you will know everything that at County we say to students about the process of revision, about the process of putting things into their long-term memory, and you will be superbly placed to support your child through the exam process. So if you don't know anything about that stuff, if you haven't been to any of our sessions we put on for families, if you haven't watched the video on screen, I would suggest you pause this video now, go and have a look at the resource on screen first, and then come back to this to specifically think about English language. Okay. Hopefully you are well versed then in what we mean when we talk about learning things, putting knowledge into our long-term memory, and the process of using flashcards to do this. The question for English language then is, how relevant is this to English language? As I've said, there's an excellent resource on how to revise for maths, and one of the things that Miss Bidwell says in that is that when it comes to maths, there are a few things to know for sure, but actually the best way to become really competent at maths is to practice using that knowledge. Once you know something, that's great, but you then have to be able to apply it to new and novel situations, which is what maths is all about. Similarly, English language, there isn't a huge amount to know. There are some things to know, which I'll talk about in a second, but there aren't loads and loads of dates and facts for you to memorize like there might be in a subject like history. Let's talk about the things you have to know though when it comes to English language. Now, before we do that, the best resource that you have is your class Teams page. And again, if you are a family member watching this, please make sure you have sat down with your child, get them to log on to their Teams page, go to their English Teams page, get them to navigate there, and get them to show you the class materials. And the class materials should contain a whole bunch of things, every single lesson that's ever been taught, a whole bunch of past papers, recorded lessons and all the rest of it, and I'll show you some of those in a second. The answer to the question, where can I find, should always be answered pretty much by the answer, it's on your Teams page. Right, when it comes to knowledge then, stuff you can put on flashcards, what is there to know in English language? Well, the first thing to know are the writer's methods that are used to create meaning. Pretty much every question in the English language paper, certainly in the first half of both papers, you have to be aware of writers' methods. What are the techniques, the devices, the tools that writers are using to create meaning? These are things like onomatopoeia, alliteration, similes, metaphors, personifications, imperative sentence mood, complex compound sentences, third person omniscient narrative voices, third person limited objective narrative voices. If you don't know what these terms mean, if you are not well versed in the technical vocabulary of the subject of English, you will not be able to get a good mark in your English language. You have to be fully competent in using the language of the subject. Now, the great thing is this is not difficult to do, but it does take time. You need to know these methods. If you don't know all of them, that's fine. Go to your Teams page. Here is an extract from my Teams page. I've gone into the section which are English language lessons, and in there is every one of the 25, 26 or so English language lessons that I've taught across the course. Now, there are 25, 26 resources. Actually, it amounted to about 40 lessons or so. When we started the course, lesson number 1, we were looking at sound methods. Then we went on to words and devices. Sentence types and moods came later. And we spent a lot of the first few lessons making sure we understood what methods we need to be conversant with if we are to be good English language students. So if you don't know these, go to the Teams page, go to your English language lessons, open lesson number 1 on sound methods. That's where you're going to start creating your flashcards if you haven't got them already. Go through all of the initial early lessons all the way through to narrative voice, which I think is the last of the methods lessons. Make sure you have all of those on flashcards, and there you go. That is the technical knowledge you need to be able to succeed in English language. What you then need to do, of course, is regularly practice those flashcards. And that's where families can be a great help, scheduling in regular sessions, not just for English, but for all subjects, where for 10 minutes you go through those flashcards and help your child put that knowledge into their long-term memory. The second thing that you need to know, the second thing that you can put onto flashcards, are the question formulae. For every questioning in the English language exam, there is a way to answer it that gives you the best chance of getting a strong mark. Now, you will have been taught these by your English teacher. We all teach them in the same way, but in case you missed a lesson, or in case you perhaps didn't concentrate as hard as you should have done in a lesson, or it was just a long time ago and you've got things confused in your head, and that happens, please don't worry. There are recorded lessons available for all of the first half questions in the English language papers. So questions 1 to 4 in the English language papers. And who knows, by the time you're watching this, there may also be a question 5 version available. At the time of doing this, though, we haven't got that in production just yet. These will again be on your teacher's team page, and again, they're not there as I'm recording this, but hopefully in the next couple of weeks we will have these on YouTube as well. Here is a lesson which takes you through every single question formula. How do you go about answering each of these 8 questions? This is the sort of stuff that can go on a flashcard. You could just have on one side the flashcard, paper 1, question 1, formula and things to remember, and on the other side you can have what the formula is and what you need to remember to do. And that is a great way of just getting those question formulae in your head. Now actually there's a little bit more in those recorded lessons as well. In there we go through model answers. We give further questions that you can have a little practice at. So they are pretty complete resources. Some of them are kind of 20-30 minute lessons. So there's lots that you can do around reviewing those recorded lessons. A great way to revise. So there you have it. When it comes to English language, there's not a lot to know. Someone sitting down for 4 or 5 hours probably, being really disciplined, could write down on flashcards everything you need to know for English language. The more important part of it is practicing applying that knowledge to actual questions. So how do you go about practicing? Well, first thing, please have a look on your Teams page, because everything I'm going to talk about now, the place you will get these resources will be on your class's Teams page. The best resource you have available are past papers. Now, your subject teacher, your English teacher, will have set you lots of assessments. You will have done lots of assessments as you've gone through the course. But also on your Teams page, your teacher will have placed all of the past papers that we are happy for you to have. We always keep back about 2 or 3 for every year group, so that we can use those for formal assessments. But we have, I think, between about 15 and 20 now past papers that are available on your Teams pages. And if you particularly want to focus on a question, right, today I'm going to go and look at paper 1, question 4. You can go and grab a couple of past papers and have a go at those. Take them to your teacher. Your teacher will not do a full mark of them for you, but they'll be happy to have a look at them and give you a couple of pointers as to how you're getting on. So that is the best resource. Another resource, though, that you will be familiar with, hopefully, is the online program Read Theory. Now, your teacher has hopefully given you a class code, and you've been doing lots of these for homework. If not, for whatever reason, if you're coming to this resource from another place, Read Theory is something you can go and log into yourself. You can create an account yourself and have a look at. Now, it's not perfect, the resource of Read Theory. It's not perfect for a few reasons. I suppose the overall reason it's an American resource. That means that a lot of the content, well, all of the content is very much America focused, and will seem a little bit incongruent perhaps to students looking at it from the UK. There's also some technical things, obviously, like it has American spellings, which isn't ideal. And it's not designed specifically for the AQA English language exam. It's designed for the American system. However, there are lots of things which are great about it. First of all, it's free, and secondly, it broadly mirrors the kinds of skills that are being tested in the English language exam. It asks you to read a text analytically, to read it closely, to make sure you are reading for meaning and pulling out the kinds of methods that writers are using. And it also asks questions which build in a very similar way to the questions that you get asked on the English language exam. There are some pretty straightforward recall and retrieval questions. There are some inference questions. There are some questions which ask you to identify writers' methods. There aren't comparison questions like there might be in paper 2, but it is a really good resource. It's a really quick way of practicing the skills of English language. If you go and look at a past paper, that is the optimal way. That is the best bit of practice you can do. But it does take a bit of time. You have to make sure you've got your resource, print off the paper, sit down, go through it. It might well be a sort of 20-minute process, even if you're answering one of the shorter questions. Whereas if you've just got 5 minutes to spare, you can smash out a quick Read Theory activity, and you're keeping those skills sharp, even if it might not be the absolute perfect fit for what we are doing. Okay, so that is how you practice English language. There's basically 2 things. You do past papers. If you haven't got enough time to do that, knocking out a quick Read Theory is a brilliant thing to do. Right, last slide then. Let's have a think about what a revision session might look like for English language. And what I'm going to suggest here is that you're doing a 55-minute revision session. Maybe you're going to sit down of an evening, you're going to do 2 hours of work. 1 hour is going to be English language, another hour is going to be another subject. So let's schedule a 55-minute session for you so that you've got 5 minutes to go to the toilet and get yourself a drink before you start your next revision session. First thing to note, please, and if you've looked at our general video on how to revise, we say this here as well. Please remember that faffing about, kind of gathering resources, rearranging your flashcards, rearranging your stationery drawers, that is not revision, and that does not count as part of your revision time. All of the stuff you need has to be ready before a revision session starts. What we're talking about in this 55-minute revision session is actually doing full-on work. Now, here is what it might look like. All right, first 5 minutes, let's get our brains ticking, let's get our brains thinking like English language students. Let's do a quick read theory activity. That is an online activity, so you need to be careful you don't get distracted. Doing that on a desktop computer away from your phone is probably the best thing to do. Let's also just get our minds primed on remembering some of those question formulas and also just testing ourselves on some of those methods. Get perhaps a family member for 5 minutes just to rattle through your English language flashcards with you and make sure that that stuff is going into your long-term memory. We're now going to spend 30 minutes. We're going to listen to one of the recorded lessons on our Teams page and hopefully soon on our YouTube channel. We're perhaps going to, I don't know, listen to the one on paper 1, question 3, the structure question. We're going to make some notes. We're going to complete some of the activities that are in that recorded lesson. We're not then going to go and do a question, paper 1, question 3, because that's not really testing whether we've remembered the things from that lesson. We're going to do, let's say, paper 1, question 2, which was a recorded lesson perhaps you did a couple of nights ago. We're going to give ourselves 10 minutes. We've already got that resource printed out, ready to go, of course, and finding that resource is not part of our revision time. And we're going to smash out a paper 1, question 2, and slot that in our bags for the next day, ready to take and just to let our teacher have a quick look at that. And then finally, we're just going to finish it off because we've got a bit of time. We're going to do 5 minutes of another read theory activity. Now look folks, that's a typical session. What is a typical session? It will change, of course. If you were doing a longer question, past paper question, a paper 1 question 4 or a paper 1 question 5 or a paper 2 question 5, that of course would take much longer. That might take 20 or even 45 minutes to do. So this typical session would look different, but hopefully this gives you a bit of an idea about how you might schedule an hour's work on English language. The last thing that it's worth saying is that if you take this kind of approach, if you did 15, 20 of these sessions, you could pretty much go from nothing in English language to being able to sit the English language exam and probably do okay, even if you'd never sort of gone to a lesson. Now, I'm not advocating that by any means, but everything you need to do well at English language is on the resources that we've talked about here. Look, whatever your position is, however you're coming to this, whether student or family member, hope this video is useful in helping you to revise for your English language GCSE. Thank you very much.